Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Daniel, and in this video we'll be covering a game that I played a couple of days ago in the 2022 July Open. This was an online event on ICC, and my rating online at the time was 1982. And so in this game I actually played a grandmaster, and actually I'll spoil the result. I actually ended up winning this game, which is why we'll be looking at the full game in its full length to see how I managed to win this game. So, without further ado, I'm playing black, and let's take a look at what happened. So here, my opponent played d4. So, against d4, I play the King's Indian, so knight f6. And then just some normal opening moves here. Here I play d6, preventing e5. And here my opponent plays the move h3. So h3, I actually haven't seen this move too much. I've seen this move a couple of times. So the computer here, it suggests castles, just directly castles, getting our king safe. And here instead, I elected to go with the move c6. So the reason why I went with c6 was because since it's a grandmaster, I had a feeling that, since I also looked at his previous games, that he usually just launches a kingside attack when he plays the King's Indian and just tries to deal with their opponent really quickly, since obviously his opponents aren't as good as he is, so he just tries to launch a kingside attack with his kingside pawns and just tries to really quickly finish the game. So here I elected to go with c6 because against a kingside attack, I knew that I'd probably have to do something like a bit of a same-ish setup, which the same-ish for white would be playing the move f3 and then launching g4, h4, and then trying to attack on the king side. And so that is why I decided to play the move c6, because against the same-ish, I play c6, and since h3, I had a feeling he would go g4 and f4. I had a feeling that c6 would bode well for me. So here, bishop to d3. Here I play queen to b6. Again, not quite the most accurate move. The most accurate move would actually be knight b to d7, with ideas of playing e5 in the future. Instead, I play queen to b6. Queen to b6, so my idea is, firstly, I attack this pawn here, so he has to find some way to defend it. Computer suggests knight to f3 here, which is what was played. And here, I figured that I'm obviously firstly attacking the d4 pawn, but I'm also putting some pressure on the b2 point here, on the b2 pawn, so that this bishop can't move as freely as it wants to. So for example, after knight to f3, say I just castle, you can't move this bishop because say like bishop to e3, then I can simply take on b2, attacking the knight, and I'm actually winning a pawn here. So that's why I like to go with queen to b6. So as I mentioned before, knight to f3 was played in the game, defending this pawn on d4. And here I play the move e5. e5, although it looks like a pawn sacrifice, it actually isn't, because I can take this pawn on e4 after we trade. So if this were to happen, it looks like white won a pawn, but here I have knight takes e4, attacking the knight and simply winning back the pawn. So let's say after knight takes e4, bishop takes e5, and now I've opened up my bishop, and actually now my queen b6 move is quite useful as I put some pressure on this b2 pawn. So we didn't go for this. So here, in fact, my opponent played d5, locking everything down. I play knight b to d7, castles, a3. So a3, after this move knight b to d7, my intentions of course is to go knight to c5, have this nice outpost square on c5, and that's why a3 is useful, because after I play knight to c5, then you can play the move b4 combined with bishop to e3 at some point. Then maybe they can win the knight here, or I have to move my knight back, and then white has a really strong queenside presence as well. But here I continue with knight to c5 because I realized that after, say, a move like b4, then I can take the bishop here, and knight for bishop, and that's good for me, combined with the idea of now opening up the position, because obviously if I want the bishop pair, then I obviously want to open up the position. So combined with the fact that I can take in the center and open up the c file, or maybe even have a half open e file, then that would be very beneficial for me. So here, my opponent played bishop to e3, simply pinning the knight to the queen. And now b4 is an actual threat, because that would actually win my knight, since I can't play knight takes d3, since he would simply take my queen. So here I draw my queen back to c7. He plays bishop to c2. Here I thought that during the game there was a possibility that my opponent would play takes, but then after takes, I feel that maybe I can play knight e8 and then knight to d6, and I can simply just blockade the position, and this pawn won't be able to do anything. So here he plays bishop to c2, dropping back, so I don't have the knight takes d3 idea. And here I just take in the middle, clarifying a bit the position. Bishop to d7 to prevent knight to b5. And now here b4. Here after b4, I had calculated some things, and this is actually what happened in the game. So I had calculated that after b4, I actually have this really nice move knight to b3, which I played in the game. The move b4, it weakens the c3 square because when the pawn was on b2, it was protecting the knight on c3, but now it's no longer protecting the knight on c3 because it has moved to b4 to kick my knight away. And here so knight to b3, so it attacks the rook firstly on a1, and secondly it attacks the knight here. So basically, obviously you have to take. If you don't take, then you're going to lose the knight because there's no move where you move the rook to protect the knight. So after bishop takes c3, bishop takes b3, sorry, queen takes c3, I calculated that after something like rook to c1, for example, this would bode well for me because I have queen to b2, which is in fact the only square for the queen, but it's actually really nice for me because I attack the pawn on e4, and I also attack this a3 pawn. So this is a really nice position for me. Although white has the open c file, I can contest it with rook a to c8 or even rook f to c8 depending on the situation. So here, instead, my opponent plays queen to b1. So queen to b1, now the threat is playing the other rook to c1, and that would indeed trap my queen. So here I drop my queen all the way back. Rook to c1, queen to d8, preventing any c7 infiltration. And then here, rook to a2. After rook to a2, I took quite a bit of time. I took about 15 to 20 minutes. Keep in mind the time control is 40 minutes plus 10 seconds, so can't think for too long, but I thought for quite a while here, around 15 to 20 minutes. And I decided that obviously his idea is to play rook 8 to c2 and then have the double and then have the rooks doubled on the c file and try to play rook to c7. However, after I realized his plan, I didn't really see too much of a point to his plan per se, so I didn't really see too many threats. Of course, this rook being on c7 is quite annoying and quite an infiltrating move, but I can just simply move these pawns, move the b and a pawns forward, and I don't really see too much of a problem. So here I play knight to h5, preparing f5 at some point. Rook to c2, rook a to c2, and here I play knight to f4. Knight to f4, so that let's say you play rook to c7 right here. I think you got it on this on the 7th rank. I have knight to e2, forking the king and the rook. So here you can't actually move this rook off of the second rank. So here my opponent takes, and this actually opens up my bishop. Although there's nothing there, this is really nice potential for my bishop because usually in the King's Indian, the dark square bishop is usually locked in. However, now I have an open scope of what is happening on the queen side. So here rook to c7 as planned. Here I simply play b6. Now there's no points for my opponent to really target. The only point is maybe this d6 square, but that's going to take a couple of moves to get to. We continue here. So a4, trying to maybe soften up my queenside structure here. I simply play a6. Now whichever move you play, I will lock it up with the other move. So let's say b5, then I'll play a5 for example. And if a5, then I can play b5, and this is simply locked up. There's no way really to get in. So here he plays queen to d3. Queen to d3, I think his idea was to play knight to d4, and then maybe transfer his knight into the c6 square, or maybe at some point play a5, and if I play b5, then he'll have the c6 square for good. Here I play rook to e8, just another improving move. I don't really want to move the other rook over because I don't like moves like rook to a7 or b7 at some point. And here my opponent played a move that really shocked me. So here he played rook to c6. So rook to c6, the computer actually says the evaluation is equal here. So in the game, however, I thought this was actually kind of a mistake. I didn't really see why he would do this. The only reason I saw was that, okay, you can get a pass c pawn. So I took in the game. And then if you take back, you get the pass c pawn. But there's not much else besides from that I really saw here. Of course, the computer thinks this is equal. But practically speaking, for me, I don't really see how white is... I didn't really understand why white did this. Here I played rook to a7, preventing any f7 pressure. Rook to d1, which I expected, attacking this pawn right here. And here I play queen to c7. and then we trade, and here I win back the e4 pawn so that I'm still up, so that I maintain the material, I guess technically equality here, because he has a couple of extra pawns. Rook to d8 check, bishop to f8 blocking, bishop to d5, and here I simply just snap off a pawn because I don't really see any threat to my position. And then knight to e5, so knight to e5 with threatening some f7 pressure. And here I play king to g7, simply, and also knight to d7 was also a threat due to this pinned bishop on f8. So here he plays knight takes f7, winning a pawn. Here I don't take back on f7 because I calculated a couple of things. So if I take, then after bishop takes f7, king takes f7, then there's simply c7, and I don't really have an effective way of stopping c8 queen. In fact, I probably have to give up my rook, and then I have to grovel for a draw basically, as it will be rook versus bishop. So here I didn't take. Instead, I take this pawn instead. And here rook to b8, and here again I spent a lot of my time. I spent about 10 minutes here calculating a couple of things, because I realized that the threat is obviously to play rook to b7. So let's say I play a move like a5, then there's rook to b7. After rook to b7, then obviously my rook is attacked, and he's trying to propose a rook trade here. So firstly, if I move my rook, then there's a discovered check. Let's say knight to d6 for example, and then maybe there's c7, c8 in the future at some point. And secondly, if I take the rook, then after takes, then this knight here is doing wonders, as it's preventing my bishop from going to the d6 square, where it will control the promotion square. But if I play bishop d6, then obviously we just take the bishop. So here I realized that so if like a move such as rook to b7 is played, I really don't have too many options here. So here I find this really nice idea. Here I play rook to a1 check. So rook to a1 check, the idea is to bring the other rook into the e7 square. So after king to h2, then I play rook to e1. So now the idea should be clear. Let's say if rook to b7, then I simply have rook to e7. So now that if you trade, then you have no more rook to go to b7, and now I completely stop you from advancing your c pawn. And now I can actually sacrifice my rook for your two pieces, and now I would gain access to the d6 square. So in this position here, my opponent decided just to take the pawn, get one pawn back for his troubles. And here I take the knight. I realize that it's completely safe to take the knight, and now I'm actually up a piece. And now just some simple technique. In fact, here it's the end of the game. After rook to b7, I simply play bishop to e7, blocking the check. One final trick here for white would be that if black plays rook to e7, then there's simply c7 in this position, and white would actually win, because then I would actually sacrifice my rook for the pawn. Now the reason for this is because, say obviously I want to prevent promotion, so I have to play rook to e8. However, this rook on b7 after c8 equals queen, this is actually in fact check, because my rook actually it's a discovered check on my from the rook on b7 on my king on f7, and this is why I have to block with the bishop instead. So bishop to e7, and the game is over. And actually, this is quite funny. In this position, I'm pretty sure my opponent decided just to. So basically, on ICC, when a game is, they call it adjourn, or like my opponent disconnects. There's like a pop-up that shows that my opponent disconnected, and I thought that maybe my opponent had some internet connection problems, but after about 20 minutes they didn't reconnect, so I had figured that my opponent actually decided to just rage quit here, and he actually didn't come back, so I actually ended up getting the win, which was pretty funny. So here, just to highlight some final things to prevent the c pawn from advancing. After bishop to e7, I calculated a couple of things. Firstly, if c7, then I'd simply play rook to c8, and the best you can do is just to settle for a pawn trade after rook a7, say a5, then takes, and I'm up a bishop, and I would simply win. So this is how I would stop the c pawn from advancing. And say you play rook to a7 first, intending after rook to c1, rook takes a6, so you still maintain this passed c pawn. Here I would actually in fact play rook to a1. Rook to a1 to prevent you, and let's say you play c7 thinking you can get c8. Now I play rook to c1 because after rook takes a6 you're no longer protecting your c pawn, so I can play rook takes c7. And obviously if you don't advance your c pawn, then I would simply advance my a pawn. and whenever you decide to play c7, I'll simply play rook to c1, and I will simply win the c pawn without losing my without having to lose my a6 pawn for nothing. So in general, this game was pretty smooth. I managed to counter his h3 plan in the opening in the King's Indian, and also I managed to see that after rook to c6 that I was completely fine and there was no threats in the position. As usually, like if a grandmaster does an exchange sacrifice against you, you think there are some major problems with your position. However, I correctly assessed that there were no major problems with my position, and in general, it was a pretty smooth game. Had this really nice knight to b3 idea in the middle. So yeah, in general, I think technique-wise, it was a pretty good game. I managed to convert even under some major pressure there with ideas of rook to b7 at the end and with the passed c pawn. So yeah, in general, pretty good. Thanks for watching as usual. Like and subscribe, and yeah, thanks for watching.